Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with a cloth that had seen better days, squinting through the viewport of salvage Station Omega 7 at the massive derelict ship floating in the void. The vessel defied easy classification. Its hull gleamed with an opalescent shimmer that seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars and transform it into something else entirely. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, creating an almost hypnotic effect as they caught and reflected the distant starlight. "Another keeper ship," muttered Vex, his Altarian partner, whose 4 arms gestured dismissively at the display screen. "Third one this cycle. The salvage rights alone will bankrupt us before we even get close." Marcus scratched his stubbled chin, studying the readouts. The ship registered as completely dead. No energy signatures, no life signs, no electromagnetic activity whatsoever. Yet something about it nagged at him. In his 15 years of deep space salvage, he developed an instinct for ships that still had secrets to tell. The Keepers had vanished 3,000 years ago, leaving behind only their impossible technology and a galaxy full of questions. Their ships were legendary, powered by stellar energy in ways that modern science couldn't replicate. Most governments would pay astronomical sums just for a functioning power coupling, let alone an entire vessel. "Look at the registration codes," Marcus said, pointing to a series of symbols flowing across the scanner. "This isn't just any Keeper ship. According to the database, this is the Luminous Dawn, one of their deep space exploration vessels. If the stories are true, she was designed to travel between star systems using pure stellar radiation as fuel." Vex's 3 eyes widened, the middle one focusing intently on the data. "The Luminous Dawn? Marcus, that ship has been missing for over 2 millennia. Every treasure hunter in the galaxy has looked for it. The legends say it carries the complete stellar mapping data for the entire Andromeda approach vectors." Marcus nodded, already running calculations in his head. The salvage rights would indeed be expensive, but if they could restore even basic functionality to a ship like this, they'd never have to worry about money again. More importantly, the technology inside could revolutionize space travel for every species in the known galaxy. "We're going aboard," he announced, standing up and reaching for his environmental suit. "Even if we can't restore her completely, there might be portable tech we can salvage." The docking procedure took 4 hours. The Luminous Dawn was enormous, easily 3 kilometers from bow to stern, with a design that seemed to flow like liquid metal frozen in time. Strange spires jutted from her hull at impossible angles, each one covered in the same geometric patterns that decorated the main superstructure. As their salvage pod Iron Maiden made contact with an airlock, Marcus felt a strange tingling in his fingertips. He'd experienced something similar before, usually when working on ships with residual energy signatures. But this felt different, more alive somehow. The airlock cycled through ancient protocols, surprising both salvagers when it actually responded to their entry codes. Emergency lighting flickered to life in the corridors beyond, casting an eerie blue glow that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. "Artificial gravity is still functioning," Vex observed, checking his readings as they moved deeper into the ship. "Atmosphere processors are offline, but the basic life support infrastructure appears intact." "How is that possible after 3,000 years?" Marcus ran his hand along the walls as they walked. The material felt warm to the touch, almost alive. Keeper technology had always been organic in nature. Their ships grew rather than being built, using principles that human science was only beginning to understand. They reached what appeared to be the main engineering section after an hour of careful exploration. The chamber was vast, with curved walls that stretched up into darkness. In the center stood a structure that took Marcus's breath away. A crystalline matrix the size of a small building, its faceted surfaces dark and lifeless, but somehow still beautiful. "The stellar core," Vex whispered reverently. "I've seen schematics, but never imagined anything this complex." Marcus approached the core slowly, his engineering instincts taking over. He could see how the crystal matrix connected to thousands of smaller conduits that ran throughout the ship's structure. Each facet was precisely cut to capture and focus stellar radiation, transforming raw starlight into usable energy through processes that seemed to border on the magical. But something was wrong. The crystal surfaces were clouded, their normally perfect clarity marred by what looked like some kind of contamination. Marcus pulled out his portable scanner and ran it over the nearest facet. Quantum decay, he muttered, reading the results. The stellar alignment matrix has been corrupted. Without proper calibration, the crystals can't focus starlight effectively. Vex's excitement was visible even through his environmental suit. Can you fix it? Marcus studied the readouts for several minutes, his mind working through the complex physics involved. Keeper technology operated on principles that human science had only recently begun to understand. Quantum crystallography, stellar resonance manipulation, photonic consciousness integration. But at its core, it was still engineering, and engineering was something Marcus understood. Maybe, he said finally, the basic structure appears sound. The contamination looks like standard quantum drift, something that happens when stellar cores aren't properly maintained over long periods. I might be able to recalibrate the matrix, but it would require manual alignment of each crystal facet. Manual alignment? Vex's voice carried a note of incredulity. Marcus, there are thousands of facets in that matrix. The calculations alone would take months. Marcus smiled, pulling out his toolkit. Not if you know what you're looking for. Keeper technology follows patterns, mathematical sequences based on stellar radiation wavelengths. I've been studying their engineering principles for years. The alignment isn't random. It's based on the harmonic frequencies of the nearest star. He approached the first crystal cluster, a grouping of 12 facets arranged in a complex geometric pattern. Each crystal was roughly the size of his head, its surface clouded with the quantum contamination that had built up over millennia of neglect. Working carefully, Marcus began cleaning the first crystal with a specialized sonic tool, designed to remove quantum particles without damaging the underlying structure. As the contamination cleared, the crystal's surface began to regain its original clarity, showing hints of the incredible precision with which it had been crafted. The keepers understood something about light that we're only beginning to grasp, he explained to Vex as he worked. They didn't just use stellar radiation as fuel. They treated it as a living thing, something with its own consciousness and purpose. Each crystal is tuned to specific wavelengths, creating a symphony of light that powers the entire ship. Hours passed as Marcus methodically cleaned and calibrated crystal after crystal. The work was painstaking, requiring absolute precision in both the cleaning process and the mathematical calculations needed to determine proper alignment. But gradually, a pattern began to emerge. Each crystal cluster was designed to capture specific types of stellar radiation. Some focused on the raw energy of stellar cores, others on the more subtle radiations from stellar coronas or solar winds. The mathematical relationships between the clusters were based on the golden ratio and other constants that appeared throughout Keeper technology. As Marcus completed the first major cluster, something unexpected happened. The crystals began to emit a soft glow, pulsing in rhythm with the distant star that provided light to this region of space. The glow was faint at first, but grew stronger as more crystals came online. It's working, Vex breathed, watching the readings on his scanner climb steadily. Power levels are increasing across the entire matrix. Marcus nodded, but didn't slow his work. He could feel something building in the ship around them, a sense of awakening, as if the vessel itself was slowly coming back to life. The emergency lighting grew brighter, and he could hear the distant hum of systems beginning to activate throughout the massive ship. The second cluster proved easier to calibrate, as if the ship was learning from Marcus's work and adjusting itself to assist in the restoration process. By the time he reached the third cluster, the crystals were practically cleaning themselves, quantum contamination dissolving under exposure to the growing stellar field generated by the restored portions of the matrix. This is incredible, Vex said, monitoring the ship's systems as they came online one by one. Atmosphere processors are activating, artificial gravity is stabilizing, and I'm reading power fluctuations in what appears to be the navigation system. Marcus, I think the ship is trying to remember how to fly. Marcus paused in his work, feeling the deck plates vibrate slightly under his feet. The vibration had a rhythm to it, almost like a heartbeat. He placed his hand against the nearest bulkhead and felt the same warm, living sensation he'd noticed in the corridors. Keeper ships aren't just machines, he realized aloud. They're organisms. The stellar core isn't just a power source. It's the heart of a living system. By restoring the crystals, we're not just fixing an engine. We're healing a wounded creature. The fourth and fifth clusters responded even more readily to Marcus's ministrations. As each section of the stellar core came online, the ship's responses grew more coordinated. Lights flickered in sequence throughout the engineering section, and Marcus could hear the whisper of air circulation systems beginning their ancient cycles. By the time Marcus reached the final cluster, the stellar core was pulsing with brilliant light, each crystal facet perfectly aligned to capture and focus the starlight streaming in from the void outside. The mathematical precision of the alignment was breathtaking. Thousands of crystals working in perfect harmony to transform raw stellar radiation into the exotic energies that powered Keeper technology. Power output is approaching nominal levels, Vex reported, his voice filled with awe. Marcus, according to these readings, this ship is generating enough energy to power a small planet. And it's all coming from Starlight, pure, free, infinite Starlight. Marcus stepped back from the stellar core, exhausted but exhilarated. The crystalline matrix pulsed with life, its facets catching and refracting light in patterns that seemed almost too beautiful to be mere technology. He could feel the ship responding around him, systems awakening after 3 millennia of slumber. Suddenly, the air around them shimmered, and a figure materialized in front of the stellar core. It was humanoid, but clearly not human, with elongated features and skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. Marcus recognized it immediately from his studies, a keeper, or at least a projection of one. The figure turned to face Marcus, its eyes focusing on him with unmistakable intelligence. When it spoke, the words seemed to form directly in his mind rather than reaching his ears through the air. "Who has awakened the luminous dawn?" the figure asked, its mental voice carrying harmonics that resonated with the pulsing of the stellar core. "Who has sung the song of Starlight back to our sleeping child?" Marcus found his voice, though speaking to a 3,000-year-old projection still felt surreal. "I'm Marcus Chun, a salvage engineer. My partner, and I found your ship drifting dead in space. I was able to restore the stellar core by recalibrating the crystal matrix." The Keeper projection studied him intently, its glowing eyes seeming to look through him rather than at him. "A human," it said wonderingly. "How curious. Your species was barely discovering fire when the luminous dawn began her final voyage. Yet you understand the song of Starlight well enough to heal our child's heart." "I'm an engineer," Marcus replied. "I understand systems, patterns, mathematical relationships. Your technology follows principles that can be learned, even if they're more advanced than anything my species has developed." The projection smiled, an expression that transformed its alien features into something almost human. "Understanding and wisdom are not the same thing, young engineer. Many species have tried to replicate our stellar cores over the millennia. All have failed because they approach the crystals as mere machines rather than living things. You succeeded because you listened to what the ship was telling you." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The luminous dawn chose you," the Keeper explained. "Our ships are not just vehicles. They are partners, companions, living entities with their own consciousness and purpose. This ship has been waiting 3,000 years for someone capable of understanding its needs. It guided you here, influenced your decisions, helped you succeed where others would have failed." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The strange tingling he'd felt, The way the work had become easier as he progressed, the sense that the ship was helping him. It hadn't been his imagination. Why, he asked. Why would your ship choose a human salvage engineer? The Keeper projection gestured toward the stellar core, its crystalline facets now blazing with captured starlight. Because humanity possesses something that even we, in all our wisdom, sometimes lacked, the ability to see beauty and life in things that others would dismiss as mere machinery. You didn't just repair our stellar core, young engineer. You understood it, respected it, treated it as a living thing deserving of care and attention. Marcus looked around the engineering section, seeing it with new eyes. The flowing curves of the walls, the organic patterns in the metal, the way the lighting seemed to pulse with life. It all made sense now. This wasn't just a ship. It was a living being, and he had just helped it heal from centuries of abandonment. What happens now, he asked. The Keeper projection began to fade, its form becoming translucent as the stellar core's energy stabilized. Now, the luminous dawn chooses its own destiny. And perhaps, if you are willing, it will choose you to help guide that destiny. As the projection disappeared, Marcus felt the ship around him settling into new patterns of activity. Systems throughout the vessel were coming online in sequence, each one adding to the growing symphony of energy and life that flowed through the crystalline matrix. He had succeeded in reviving a ship powered by pure starlight, but in doing so, he had awakened something far greater than mere technology. He had awakened a legend, and now that legend was looking to him for guidance on what to do next. Vex approached cautiously, his scanner readings showing energy levels that defied easy comprehension. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I think we're in over our heads." Marcus smiled, feeling the deck plates pulse gently under his feet like the heartbeat of some vast, benevolent creature. "Maybe," he agreed. But what a way to go. The luminous dawn had chosen them, and Marcus couldn't wait to see where that choice would lead. The bridge of the luminous dawn was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Instead of traditional control panels and display screens, the command center consisted of flowing organic structures that seemed to grow from the deck itself. Translucent surfaces pulsed with soft light, responding to touch with ripples of color that spread outward like stones dropped in still water. Marcus ran his hand along what appeared to be a navigation console, feeling the warm, living sensation that characterized all Keeper technology. As his fingers made contact, symbols appeared in the translucent surface, star charts, energy readings, and data streams written in the flowing script of the ancient Keepers. "The ship is trying to communicate with us," he told Vex, who was examining a similar console on the opposite side of the bridge. "These displays aren't just showing us information. They're asking us questions, trying to understand our intentions." Vex's four arms moved in complex patterns over his console, his natural dexterity allowing him to interact with multiple displays simultaneously. "I'm reading navigation data for star systems I've never heard of," he reported. "Some of these coordinates extend beyond the edge of known space. Marcus, this ship has been to places that no modern vessel has ever reached." As if responding to their conversation, the main display at the center of the bridge shimmered to life. A three-dimensional star map appeared in the air above them, showing their current position as a small blue surrounded by familiar stellar formations. But as Marcus watched, the map expanded, revealing vast regions of space that existed only in theoretical models and distant observations. "The Andromeda approach vectors," Marcus breathed, recognizing the implications. "The Keepers mapped the space between our galaxy and Andromeda. They were planning to make contact with whatever civilizations might exist there." The display shifted, focusing on a particular region of intergalactic space where several massive objects appeared to be in motion. As Marcus studied the formations, he realized he was looking at something extraordinary. Artificial structures, enormous beyond comprehension, moving through the void between galaxies with purpose and intelligence. "Those aren't natural formations," Vex said, his voice filled with awe. Those are ships. Fleets of them, each one larger than our biggest space stations. And according to these readings, they're all heading toward our galaxy. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were staggering. The Keepers hadn't just been explorers. They'd been scouts, investigating potential threats to their civilization. And what they'd found had been significant enough to warrant mapping approach vectors for defensive purposes. "How old is this data?" he asked, trying to read the temporal markers on the display. The ship responded to his question by highlighting specific symbols on the star chart. As Marcus studied them, his understanding of Keeper timekeeping allowed him to translate the information. The data was nearly 3,000 years old, created during the final years of the Keeper civilization, just before their mysterious disappearance. "This is why they vanished," Marcus realized aloud. "They didn't just disappear, they evacuated. They saw something coming from outside our galaxy and decided to abandon their territory rather than face it." Vex was examining additional data streams, his translator struggling to keep up with the complex information flow. "Marcus, according to these records, those fleets from intergalactic space weren't just approaching randomly. They were responding to signals, artificial transmissions that originated from somewhere in our own galaxy." The pieces began falling into place in Marcus's mind. The Keepers had detected evidence of communication between something in their home galaxy and the mysterious fleets approaching from beyond. Rather than investigate further, they had chosen to flee, taking their advanced technology with them and leaving younger species like humanity to face whatever was coming. "The question is," Marcus said grimly, "are those fleets still out there? And if so, how much closer have they gotten in the last 3,000 years? The ship's response was immediate and unsettling. The star map updated, showing the current estimated positions of the intergalactic fleets based on their previously observed trajectories. The massive formations had advanced significantly, with the nearest elements now less than a century away from reaching the outer edges of galactic space. "We need to get this information to the Galactic Council," Vex said urgently. "This changes everything. If there are hostile fleets approaching from intergalactic space, every species in the galaxy needs to know." Marcus nodded, but his attention was drawn to another section of the display. The luminous dawn was showing him something else: technical specifications for Keeper defensive systems, weapon configurations that utilized stellar energy in ways that modern military technology couldn't match. "Look at this," he said, highlighting the defensive data. The Keepers didn't just run away. They designed weapons capable of fighting these intergalactic forces. Ship-mounted stellar cannons that could focus an entire star's energy output into a coherent beam. Defensive shields powered by stellar cores that could absorb and redirect incoming attacks. The implications were staggering. The technology to defend against the approaching fleets existed, locked away in the databases of ancient Keeper vessels like the Luminous Dawn. But understanding the technology was only the first step. Implementing it would require resources and cooperation on a scale that the fractured political landscape of the galaxy had never achieved. As if sensing his thoughts, the ship presented him with additional information: manufacturing specifications, resource requirements, construction timelines, everything needed to build defensive systems based on Keeper technology. But the requirements were enormous, far beyond what any single species or even alliance of species could provide. "The ship wants us to unite the galaxy," Marcus said wonderingly. "It's showing us how to build weapons and defenses, but the resource requirements would force every major civilization to work together." The Keepers designed this as a test. Vex studied the data streams, his three eyes working independently to process the complex information. "A test of what?" "Maturity," Marcus replied. "The ability to put aside differences and work toward a common goal." The Keepers could have stayed and fought, but they chose to leave and see if the younger species could learn to cooperate when faced with an existential threat. The bridge around them pulsed with gentle light as the ship's consciousness processed their understanding. Marcus could feel its approval, a warm sensation that seemed to flow through the very structure of the vessel. The luminous dawn had been waiting for someone who could understand not just its technology, but its purpose. "We need to test the ship's systems," Marcus said, making a decision that would change the course of his life. "If we're going to convince the galactic governments to work together, we need to demonstrate that Keeper technology actually works. And that means taking the luminous dawn out for a proper flight." The ship responded immediately to his intention, bringing up navigation displays and stellar energy readings. Marcus could see the crystalline matrix at the heart of the vessel blazing with captured starlight, more than enough power to propel them anywhere in the galaxy at speeds that would make modern starships look like toys. "Flight preparations are automatically initiated," Vex observed, reading the displays with growing excitement. "Marcus, according to these readings, this ship can achieve faster-than-light travel without using standard hyperdrive technology. It literally rides currents of stellar radiation, surfing from star to star like waves in an ocean." Marcus moved to what appeared to be the pilot station, a flowing console that seemed to reshape itself around his hands as he approached. The interface was intuitive, responding to his thoughts as much as his physical actions. He could feel the ship's eagerness to move, to stretch its wings, and feel the solar winds flowing past its hull once again. "Destination?" he asked, studying the navigation options presented by the ship's consciousness. The luminous dawn highlighted several possibilities, each one significant for different reasons. There was Keeper Station Alpha, a massive orbital facility in the Rigel system that had been abandoned for millennia. The Sanctuary Worlds, planets where the Keepers had established refugee colonies for species displaced by ancient conflicts. And, most intriguingly, a set of coordinates in deep space labeled simply as the Archive. "The Archive," Marcus said, selecting the mysterious destination. "If we're going to understand what the Keepers really knew about the approaching fleets, that's where we'll find our answers." The ship's response was immediate and overwhelming. Stellar energy surged through the crystalline matrix as the vessel began to move, accelerating away from Salvage Station Omega 7 with impossible grace. There was no sensation of movement, no pressure or discomfort. The ship's systems compensated perfectly for the tremendous forces involved in their acceleration. Through the bridge's transparent sections, Marcus watched the stars begin to shift and blur as the luminous dawn reached speeds that defied conventional physics. But this wasn't the violent distortion of hyperdrive travel. Instead, the stars seemed to float around them like liquid light, beautiful and mesmerizing. "We're not just moving through space," Marcus realized, watching the stellar phenomena around them. "We're swimming in it, riding the natural currents of energy that flow between stars. The ship isn't fighting against the universe. It's becoming part of it." The journey to the Archive took 6 hours by the ship's chronometer, but felt like minutes to Marcus. The luminous dawn moved through space with the fluid grace of a creature in its natural element, following invisible currents of stellar radiation that carried them across vast distances with minimal energy expenditure. When they finally arrived at their destination, Marcus was unprepared for what he saw. The Archive wasn't a space station or planetary facility. It was a construct that defied easy description. Crystalline structures the size of moons orbited an artificial star, their surfaces covered with the same geometric patterns that decorated Keeper ships. The artificial star itself pulsed with controlled fusion reactions, providing the massive energy requirements needed to power whatever was contained within the crystalline structures. "It's a library," Vex said wonderingly, reading the energy signatures emanating from the construct. "But not just a library of information, a library of consciousness. Those crystalline structures contain the uploaded minds of billions of beings, preserved in matrices of pure energy." The luminous dawn approached one of the larger structures, its hull patterns resonating with similar designs on the Archive surface. As they drew closer, Marcus could see that the geometric patterns weren't just decorative. They were communication interfaces, allowing compatible vessels to establish direct neural connections with the archive's vast databases. The Keepers didn't just flee the galaxy, Marcus realized as understanding dawned. They preserved everything: their knowledge, their culture, their very consciousness, in case younger species proved worthy of inheriting their legacy. The ship established contact with the archive through quantum resonance, and immediately the bridge filled with new displays and information streams. Marcus found himself looking at historical records spanning millions of years, scientific databases that contained solutions to problems a species hadn't even discovered yet, and, most importantly, detailed intelligence about the approaching intergalactic fleets. The beings coming from beyond the galaxy weren't invaders in the traditional sense. They were harvesters, ancient entities that traveled from galaxy to galaxy, consuming the stellar energy and converting entire civilizations into fuel for their massive fleet vessels. They had been doing this for eons, leaving behind empty galaxy after empty galaxy as they continued their endless journey through the cosmos. The signals the Keepers detected, Marcus said, studying the historical data, they weren't attempts at communication. They were dinner bells. Something in our galaxy was calling the harvesters, telling them we were ready for consumption. Vex was examining the technical specifications for the harvester's technology, his face growing pale as he understood the implications. Marcus, these entities don't just destroy civilizations, they absorb them. Every species they encounter gets added to their collective consciousness, forced to serve as components in their harvesting operations. Death would be merciful compared to what they do. But the archive contained more than just warnings about the approaching threat. Hidden within its vast databases were the complete technical specifications for the Keeper's defensive network, a galaxy-spanning system of stellar fortresses and energy weapons that could turn the combined output of entire star systems into coherent defensive barriers. The Keepers built all of this, Marcus said, studying the construction plans with growing amazement. A complete defensive network, ready to deploy. They just needed younger species to mature enough to operate it. The archive began downloading critical information directly into the Luminous Dawn S databases, providing them with everything needed to begin construction of the defensive network. Manufacturing specifications, resource allocation plans, coordination protocols for multi-species cooperation, everything required to unite the galaxy against the approaching threat. The timeline is critical, Marcus noted, studying the projected arrival dates for the harvester fleets. We have perhaps 50 years before the first scouts reach our galaxy, and maybe another 20 before the main fleets arrive. That's not much time to build a galaxy-spanning defensive network. Vex was already working on communication protocols, preparing to contact the major galactic governments with their newfound information. We'll need to convince them that the threat is real, that the technology works, and that cooperation is the only path to survival. That won't be easy, given the current political climate. Marcus nodded, but his attention was drawn to another section of the archive's data. Personal records from individual keepers, their thoughts, and experiences preserved for posterity. As he read through their accounts, a pattern began to emerge that filled him with both hope and determination. The Keepers hadn't just been running from an unbeatable enemy. They had been preparing the galaxy for a test of character, a crucible that would determine whether younger species deserved to inherit the cosmos. The approaching harvesters weren't just a threat. They were an opportunity for the galaxy's diverse civilizations to prove they could work together for mutual survival. The Luminous Dawn didn't choose us randomly, Marcus said to Vex, as understanding crystallized in his mind. It chose us because humanity has something the Keepers valued, the ability to see potential in things that others would dismiss. We took a dead ship and brought it back to life. Now we need to do the same thing with a fractured galaxy. The ship pulsed with approval around them, its consciousness resonating with Marcus's determination. They had the knowledge, they had the technology, and they had perhaps the most advanced vessel in the galaxy at their disposal. Now they needed to begin the seemingly impossible task of uniting dozens of species in common cause against an enemy that existed beyond their worst nightmares. The luminous dawn began charting courses to the major galactic capitals, preparing for a journey that would test not just their diplomatic skills, but their faith in the fundamental goodness of intelligent life. The harvesters were coming, but they wouldn't find an easy meal waiting for them. They would find a galaxy ready to fight back. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime fell silent as the holographic display showed the approaching harvester fleets in all their terrifying detail. Representatives from 47 different species stared at the projection with expressions ranging from disbelief to outright panic. The massive vessels, each one the size of a small moon, moved through the void between galaxies with inexorable purpose. Marcus stood before the assembled delegates, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. Behind him, the luminous dawn floated in orbit around the council world, its opalescent hull visible through the chamber's transparent dome. The ship's presence had already caused quite a stir. No one had seen a functioning keeper vessel in over 3 millennia. The data is indisputable, Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. These harvesters have consumed dozens of galaxies over millions of years. Our galaxy is next on their list, and we have perhaps 70 years before they arrive in force. Chancellor Thrix of the Altarian Federation leaned forward in his seat, his blue-scaled features creased with concern. Even if we accept that this threat is real, human Shun, how can we possibly defend against entities capable of destroying entire civilizations? Your own species has barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Marcus had expected this response. The human race was indeed one of the younger members of the galactic community, having achieved spaceflight only centuries after species like the Altarians had established interstellar empires. But that youth came with advantages that older civilizations often overlooked. Because we don't think like they do, Marcus replied, gesturing toward the harvester fleet projection. These entities have been using the same tactics for millions of years. Overwhelming force, absorption of conquered species, conversion of stellar energy into fuel for their fleets. They expect resistance to follow predictable patterns. He activated a new display, showing the technical specifications for the Keeper defensive network. The assembled delegates gasped as they saw the scope of the proposed construction. Stellar fortresses, energy channeling networks, weapons that could focus the output of entire star systems into coherent defensive barriers. The Keepers designed a defense that these harvesters have never encountered, Marcus explained. Not individual ships or fleets fighting against impossible odds, but an integrated network that turns our entire galaxy into a single defensive entity. Every star, every planet, every artificial construct working together as components of a massive weapon system. Senator Korax of the Vegan Trade Union stood up, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns. The resource requirements alone would bankrupt every civilization in the galaxy. The energy costs, the construction timelines, the coordination needed. It's impossible. Vex stepped forward from where he had been monitoring the Luminous Dawn S systems. Not impossible, Senator. Difficult, yes. Expensive, certainly. But the alternative is extinction for every species in this chamber. Marcus activated another display, showing construction schedules and resource allocation models. The Keepers accounted for our limitations. The network is designed to be built in stages, with each completed section providing defensive coverage for the areas that are still under construction. We don't need to finish everything before the harvesters arrive. We just need enough operational sections to demonstrate that our galaxy isn't the easy target they expect. Ambassador Zephyr of the Terran Colonial Alliance raised a tentacled appendage. And you propose that humanity should lead this effort? A species that most of us had never heard of until a few decades ago. Marcus felt a familiar surge of determination, the same stubborn refusal to give up that had driven him to repair the Luminous Dawn S stellar core. Not lead, he corrected. Coordinate. Humanity has one advantage that many older civilizations have lost. We're still learning. We don't have preconceived notions about what's possible or impossible. We look at broken things and see potential instead of problems. To demonstrate his point, Marcus activated a direct communication link with the luminous dawn. The ship's consciousness flowed into the chamber's displays, sharing its perspective on the defensive network construction. The delegates watched in amazement as complex engineering problems were solved in real time. The ship's advanced intelligence finding solutions that incorporated the strengths of every major galactic species. The Altarians excel at large-scale construction projects. The ship's voice resonated through the chamber. The vegans possess unparalleled expertise in energy manipulation. The Terran colonies have developed innovative manufacturing techniques. Each species contributes elements that the others lack. General Croth of the Regellian Empire slammed his massive fist on his delegate's podium. Pretty words from an ancient computer. But what proof do we have that this technology actually works? For all we know, the Keepers fled because their defenses failed. Marcus had been waiting for this challenge. He smiled and activated another display, showing real-time sensor readings from the Luminous Dawn S-weapon systems. The proof is right above us. The ship you're looking at mounts a scaled-down version of the stellar cannon array designed for the defensive network. Would you like a demonstration? The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter as the implications sank in. Marcus continued calmly. There's an uninhabited asteroid belt 3 light minutes from here. Target designation Alpha 7 is a metallic asteroid roughly 1 kilometer in diameter. Standard nuclear weapons would barely scratch it. Through the chamber's transparent sections, the delegates could see the luminous dawn orienting itself toward the target zone. The ship's hull began to glow with captured starlight, the geometric patterns on its surface blazing with increasing intensity as the stellar core channeled energy into the weapons array. Firing, Marcus announced. A beam of pure stellar energy lanced out from the ship, crossing the distance to the target asteroid in seconds. The impact was spectacular. Not an explosion, but a sudden, brilliant flare as the asteroid's molecular structure was converted directly into energy. When the light faded, there was nothing left but glowing plasma that slowly dispersed into space. The chamber was silent for a full minute before anyone spoke. How much power did that require? Chancellor Thrix asked quietly. Approximately 0.001% of the ship's total capacity, Marcus replied. The full defensive network would have millions of times more firepower available, drawing energy from thousands of star systems simultaneously. The political maneuvering that followed lasted for hours. Each species wanted guarantees about their sovereignty, their territorial integrity, their economic interests. But gradually, as the reality of the Harvester threat sank in, practical concerns began to override political posturing. The breakthrough came when Minister Veltar of the Andromedan Research Collective presented her analysis of the Harvester technology. Her species were renowned as the galaxy's foremost experts on theoretical physics, and their conclusions were sobering. The energy signatures from these harvester vessels indicate propulsion systems based on galaxy-scale gravitational manipulation, she reported. They don't just travel between galaxies. They alter the fundamental structure of space-time to create shortcuts through higher dimensions. Conventional weapons, no matter how powerful, would be ineffective against entities operating on that scale. She gestured toward the Keeper defensive network specifications. But this system doesn't rely on conventional physics. It uses stellar resonance to create standing wave patterns in the fabric of space itself. The Harvester's own propulsion systems would become liabilities, trapping them in gravitational fields they can't escape from. The mood in the chamber shifted as the delegates realized they weren't just looking at a desperate last stand, but a genuine opportunity for victory. The Keepers hadn't fled from an unbeatable enemy. They had prepared a trap that would work only if multiple species could cooperate on an unprecedented scale. The construction timeline requires immediate action, Marcus emphasized, showing the critical path analysis for the defensive network. We need to begin with the stellar fortresses in the Orion and Sagittarius sectors. These will serve as anchor points for the energy channeling network that connects the entire system. Ambassador Korath of the Centauran Republic stood up, her voice carrying the authority of one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. The Republic pledges its full support to this endeavor. Our shipyards and construction facilities are at your disposal. The endorsement triggered a cascade of similar commitments as species after species pledged their resources to the common defense. The political unity that Marcus had thought impossible was actually happening, driven by the undeniable reality of the approaching threat. But not everyone was convinced. A faction of smaller civilizations, led by the Tau Ceti Confederation, argued for evacuation instead of defense. Why should we bet everything on untested ancient technology? Demanded President Nix of the Confederation. The Keepers themselves chose to flee rather than fight. Perhaps we should follow their example. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He thought of all the civilizations throughout the galaxy, the billions of beings living their lives in ignorance of the approaching catastrophe. Children playing in alien parks, scientists making discoveries that expanded the boundaries of knowledge, artists creating beauty that transcended species barriers. All of it would be lost if the Harvester succeeded. Because we're not the Keepers, he said finally. They were an ancient civilization, set in their ways, convinced that their solutions were the only ones possible. We're younger, more adaptable. We can look at their technology and improve on it, find new applications they never considered. He activated a final display, showing modifications to the Keeper defensive network that the Luminous Dawn had developed during their journey to Nexus Prime. The ship's consciousness had been analyzing the original designs, finding ways to enhance them using technologies and techniques developed by younger species. Human industrial techniques can reduce construction time by 30%. Altarian gravitational engineering can improve the energy coupling efficiency of the stellar fortresses. Vegan crystallography can enhance the focusing arrays beyond their original specifications. We're not just rebuilding ancient technology, we're making it better. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Marcus had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. 31 species committed to full participation in the defensive network construction. 12 others pledged limited support, resources, and personnel, but not direct involvement in combat operations. Only 4 species, including the Tau Ceti Confederation, chose to pursue evacuation plans instead. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Marcus felt a mixture of triumph and trepidation. They had achieved the impossible, galactic unity in the face of an existential threat. But the real work was just beginning. 70 years sounded like a long time, but building a galaxy-spanning defensive network would push every participating civilization to its absolute limits. Vex approached him as the chamber emptied, his 4 arms carrying data tablets loaded with preliminary construction schedules. The Rigelian Empire wants to begin immediate construction of Stellar Fortress Alpha in their home system. The Andromedan Collective is offering to handle the theoretical physics calculations for the energy network. And the Terran Colonial Alliance. He paused, grinning with all 3 mouths. The Colonial Alliance wants to put you in charge of the entire project. Marcus felt a moment of pure panic. Him, a salvage engineer from the frontier, responsible for coordinating the defense of the entire galaxy? But then he felt the Luminous Dawn's consciousness brush against his mind, offering reassurance and support. The ship had chosen him. The Archive had accepted him, and now his fellow humans were trusting him with the future of their species. Then, we'd better get started, he said, looking up through the transparent dome at the ship that had changed everything. We've got a galaxy to save. The construction of Stellar Fortress Alpha began 3 months later in the Rigel system. Marcus watched from the Luminous Dawn bridge as thousands of construction vessels from dozens of species worked together to assemble the massive structure. The fortress was a work of art as much as engineering. A crystalline spire 10 kilometers tall, its surface covered with the same geometric patterns that characterized all Keeper technology. But this wasn't just a copy of ancient designs. Human engineering had streamlined the construction process, Altarian gravity manipulation had improved the structural integrity, and vegan energy systems had enhanced the power coupling beyond the original specifications. It was a fusion of old wisdom and new innovation, exactly what Marcus had promised the Galactic Council. First power-up test in 36 hours, Vex reported from his monitoring station. All systems are showing green across the board. Marcus, I think we're actually going to pull this off. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on the long-range sensors. Somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy, the Harvester fleets were still approaching, still following the ancient signals that had drawn them across intergalactic space. They expected to find the same easy prey they had encountered in dozens of other galaxies. Instead, they would find a civilization that refused to surrender, backed by technology they had never faced, and united by a determination to survive that transcended species boundaries. The battle for the galaxy hadn't begun yet, but Marcus was confident about the outcome. The Harvesters had never faced anything like humanity before. 67 years later, Marcus Chun stood on the command deck of Stellar Fortress Prime, watching through the massive transparisteel viewports as the Harvester Vanguard emerged from the intergalactic void. The enemy vessels were even more massive than the ancient records had suggested. Each one a twisted amalgamation of consumed civilizations, their hulls incorporating the architectural styles of 100 different species into a grotesque monument to conquest. Age had silvered Marcus's hair and lined his face, but his eyes remained sharp with the same determination that had driven him to repair the luminous dawn all those decades ago. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition during the construction of the defensive network. Worlds that had never spoken to each other now shared technology and resources. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked side by side in the great shipyards that dotted every major system. Harvester fleet composition confirmed, reported Admiral Zurakim, Marcus's deputy and one of the finest tactical minds in the Terran Colonial Navy. 7 command vessels, each measuring approximately 40 kilometers in length. Escort formations of smaller vessels, still massive by our standards, but only 10 to 15 kilometers each. Total count, over 3,000 ships. Marcus nodded, studying the tactical displays that surrounded the command center. The defensive network was ready. 200 stellar fortresses spread throughout the galaxy, each one capable of channeling the energy output of its host star into focused weapons of unimaginable power. Connecting them all was the Resonance Web, a quantum-entangled communication system that allowed the entire galaxy to function as a single coordinated defense platform. Network status? He asked, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. All fortresses report ready status, came the reply from Commander Thrix, the Altarian officer who had become one of Marcus's most trusted advisors. Stellar resonance at optimal levels, energy coupling efficiency holding steady at 112% of design specifications. That last statistic still amazed Marcus. The collaborative improvements made by the allied species had exceeded even the Keeper's original projections. Human innovation, Altarian engineering, vegan crystallography, and dozens of other technological contributions had created something greater than the sum of its parts. The luminous dawn held position near Stellar Fortress Prime, its ancient hull gleaming with the accumulated starlight of 7 decades. The ship had become more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of cooperation, proof that different species could work together to achieve the impossible. Marcus could feel its consciousness even at this distance, a reassuring presence that had guided him through the darkest moments of the construction project. "Sir," called Lieutenant Voltar, the young Andromedan who served as the fortress's science officer. "We're receiving transmission attempts from the Harvester command vessels. The signals are unusual." Marcus frowned. According to the Keeper records, The harvesters had never attempted communication with their prey before. They simply arrived, consumed, and moved on. This was an unexpected development. "Put it through," he ordered. The main display shimmered and resolved into an image that made several of the bridge crew step back in horror. The being that appeared was clearly artificial, but incorporated organic components from dozens of different species. Its central body appeared to be mechanical, but arms and sensory organs from various civilizations have been grafted onto it in a display that was both technological marvel and biological abomination. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of different tones, the death songs of entire civilizations combined into a single alien communication. "We are the collective of consumed voices," the entity said, its multiple voices creating harmonics that resonated with disturbing beauty. "For 7 million years, we have brought order to chaos, unity to division, purpose to wandering civilizations. We offer you the same gift, absorption into our eternal mission." Marcus stepped forward, feeling the weight of representing not just humanity, but every species that had contributed to the defensive network. "I am Marcus Chun, speaking for the Galactic Defense Alliance. We decline your offer. This galaxy is under our protection." The harvester's response was what might have been laughter, if laughter could contain the echoes of dying worlds. "You do not understand, small creature. We are not offering a choice. We are informing you of your destiny. Resistance is futile. We have consumed civilizations far more advanced than yours." "Maybe," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was facing. "But you've never consumed a civilization like ours. We're not just one species fighting for survival. We're 47 different civilizations united by a common cause. And we have weapons you've never encountered." The harvester entity seemed to consider this for a moment, its organic components shifting in patterns that suggested alien thought processes. "Show us," it finally said. "Demonstrate this unity you claim. Perhaps it will provide interesting data before your inevitable absorption." Marcus smiled grimly and activated the network command protocols. Throughout the galaxy, stellar fortresses began to glow as they drew energy from their host stars. The resonance web hummed with power as quantum-entangled communications synchronized the firing sequences across hundreds of light-years of space. "Network firing sequence Alpha," Marcus announced. "All fortresses prepare for coordinated strike on Harvester Command Vessel designated Target 1. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 200 stellar fortresses opened fire simultaneously, their combined output focused through the resonance web into a single, devastating beam of pure stellar energy. The attack crossed the void at light speed, striking the largest Harvester command vessel with the concentrated power of an entire galaxy. The results were spectacular. The massive vessel's shields flared and buckled under the assault, its hull beginning to glow white-hot as the stellar energy overwhelmed its defensive systems. But the ship didn't simply explode. It began to unravel, its absorbed components separating back into their original forms as the energy beam disrupted the quantum bonds that held the collective together. For a moment, Marcus thought he could see individual ships breaking free from the Harvester's hull, vessels from species that had been absorbed millennia ago, their crews somehow still alive within the collective's twisted embrace. The sight was both horrifying and hopeful, suggesting that the Harvester's victims weren't truly dead, merely imprisoned. The Harvester entity's image flickered with what might have been surprise. "Impossible. You're using technologies beyond your development level. How do you possess Keeper's stellar resonance systems?" "Because we earned them," Marcus replied. "The Keepers left their knowledge for species mature enough to use it responsibly. We proved ourselves worthy by uniting 47 different civilizations in common cause." The Harvester's multiple voices took on a new tone, one that Marcus recognized as genuine concern. "The Keepers. We remember them. They fled before us, abandoning their galaxy rather than face absorption. Yet you claim to possess their weapons." "Not just their weapons," Marcus said, feeling the moment of revelation approaching. Their purpose. The Keepers didn't flee from you. They prepared for you. This entire galaxy is a trap, designed to stop your expansion once and for all. On cue, the true scope of the defensive network revealed itself. Hidden installations throughout the galaxy came online, their presence masked by 70 years of careful construction and camouflage. Not just stellar fortresses, but gravitational generators, space-time anchors, and resonance amplifiers that turned the galaxy itself into a massive weapon. The Harvester fleets found themselves caught in an expanding web of gravitational fields and energy barriers. Their usual tactics, overwhelming force and rapid absorption of enemy technology, were useless against an enemy that had spent decades studying their methods and preparing countermeasures. "You have made an error," the Harvester entity said, its voices taking on harmonics of rage and disbelief. "We are not mere raiders seeking easy prey. We are the culmination of evolution, the final stage of galactic development. We will adapt to your weapons and absorb your unity for our own purposes." But as the Harvester fleets tried to adapt, they discovered the true genius of the Keeper defensive strategy. The network wasn't just using superior technology, it was using the Harvester's own nature against them. Every attempt to absorb galactic technology only made them more vulnerable to the stellar resonance weapons. Every effort to adapt their tactics was countered by the network's quantum-entangled communication system, which allowed real-time coordination across impossible distances. Admiral Kim, Marcus called to his deputy. "Initiate Phase 2 of the network protocol." Phase 2 was even more devastating than the initial attack. Instead of focusing all their energy on individual targets, the stellar fortresses began weaving their beams together, creating a galaxy-spanning web of pure energy that caught the Harvester fleets like insects in a cosmic spider's web. But the true masterstroke was yet to come. As the Harvester vessels struggled against the energy web, the network began transmitting something they had never encountered before: the accumulated cultural heritage of 47 different civilizations. Music, art, literature, philosophy, and scientific knowledge flooded the Harvester collective's consciousness, overwhelming their absorption protocols with sheer diversity. "What are you doing to us?" the Harvester entity demanded, its voices becoming discordant as the cultural transmission continued. "Teaching you," Marcus replied. "The Keepers understood something you never learned. Unity doesn't come from absorption, it comes from cooperation. Diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. And now you're going to experience that diversity whether you want it or not." The effect on the Harvester collective was profound. Millennia of absorbed civilizations began reasserting their individual identities, breaking free from the collective consciousness that had held them prisoner. The massive command vessels started breaking apart as their component species remembered who they had been before absorption. Some of the freed civilizations chose to flee, their ancient ships streaming away from the battle zone toward distant corners of the galaxy. Others, filled with righteous fury at their long imprisonment, turned their weapons on their former captors. The Harvester fleets found themselves fighting not just the Galactic Defense Network, but their own former victims. The battle that followed lasted for days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Harvesters had built their entire existence around a single strategy: absorption and assimilation. They had no backup plan for dealing with prey that refused to be absorbed, that grew stronger through cooperation rather than conquest. When the final Harvester command vessel fell to the combined fire of a dozen different species, some of them recently liberated from the collective itself, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. The threat that had driven the Keepers from the galaxy was finally ended, defeated not by superior technology, but by the simple recognition that diversity and cooperation were more powerful than forced unity. Network shutdown protocols initiated, Admiral Kim reported. All fortresses standing down to defensive posture. The Harvester threat has been neutralized. Marcus nodded, but his attention was drawn to the liberated ships that now filled local space. Thousands of vessels representing hundreds of different species, many of them thought extinct for millennia. The galaxy had just become far more crowded and diverse than it had been in millions of years. "Open a channel to all liberated vessels," he ordered. "Welcome them to the Galactic Defense Alliance. They've earned their freedom. Now we need to help them find their place in the galaxy." The years that followed were challenging in their own way. Integrating hundreds of newly liberated species into galactic civilization required patience, diplomacy, and enormous resources. But Marcus had learned during the construction of the defensive network that the galaxy's diverse civilizations were at their best when facing seemingly impossible challenges. The Luminous Dawn served as a diplomatic vessel during those reconstruction years, its ancient authority and symbolic importance helping to smooth negotiations between species that had been enemies for eons. Marcus, now recognized as one of the galaxy's greatest heroes, used his influence to ensure that the mistakes of the past weren't repeated. On his 90th birthday, Marcus stood once again on the bridge of the Luminous Dawn, looking out at a galaxy transformed. Where once there had been fear and division, now there was cooperation and hope. The stellar fortresses that had saved the galaxy were being converted into research stations and cultural centers, their awesome power turned toward peaceful purposes. Vex, now equally aged but still sharp-minded, joined him at the viewport. "So, old friend, any regrets about taking on that salvage job all those years ago?" Marcus smiled, feeling the warm presence of the ship's consciousness surrounding them both. The Luminous Dawn had chosen well when it selected a stubborn human engineer to revive it from its long slumber. Together, they had awakened not just a single ship, but an entire galaxy's potential for greatness. "No regrets," Marcus said finally. "We fixed more than just a broken ship. We fixed a broken galaxy." Outside the viewport, the stars shined with renewed brilliance, their light no longer threatened by ancient horrors from beyond the void. The galaxy was safe, unified, and ready to face whatever challenges the universe might present. And at the heart of it all, powered by pure starlight and guided by the wisdom of cooperation, the dream of the Keepers lived on in the hands of species they had never met but had always believed in. The Luminous Dawn pulsed gently with contentment, its mission finally complete. The stars belonged to those who understood that true strength came not from conquest, but from the courage to work together toward a common goal. In the end, that simple truth had been more powerful than any weapon, more enduring than any empire, and more beautiful than any star. The galaxy was home to beings who understood the song of starlight, and that made all the difference.